that's what matters. And if you can't get to that economic buyer, especially in this economic environment, chances are the company that you're competing with that is getting in that room with that CFO, they're going to win the deal and you're not.
Cool. So I can imagine being the first seller at TripActions was, it's a pretty different motion to selling into enterprise now. Have you noticed a shift in selling to enterprise, say 5 years ago to now?
Yeah, for sure. I had the distinct pleasure of selling business travel during a pandemic when no one was traveling for business, which, if you think about it, is probably one of the hardest things you could ever do. And so when people complain today about the macroeconomic environment, I don't have a ton of sympathy because I lived through something far worse when everyone was buying all sorts of software, but nobody was really traveling for business. I think the journey has for sure changed because the macroeconomic environment we're in today, while not as dire as a pandemic for business travel, certainly is a headwind. And even going into 2024, which I think will be maybe a little bit less challenging than 2023, the reality is that companies are trying to balance growth and cost cutting. They're not buying those nice to have items that they procured in 2021. You need to have a rock solid ROI and business case. You need to have a really strong champion, an economic buyer axis. Like, those are imperative. If you're taking shortcuts or you're not as detail oriented as you can be, you will get eaten alive in this environment. And so just the bar has been raised significantly higher now versus, let's say, 5 years ago.
Definitely. And how do you communicate that to your team? Because when businesses are making layoffs, they're consolidating their tech, and you're coming in saying, hey, spend some more money on a new piece of tech. And especially in an enterprise motion, they're being told left, right, and center not to do any of that, not to be looking at any new tools and avoid shadow IT and things like that. How are you enabling your team to still win?
I think it comes down to sales fundamentals. If you think about whatever it is you're selling out there, you likely have competition, right? There's likely a myriad of solutions, and I'm going to air quote solutions there, that are doing the same thing roughly. How do you cut through that noise? You could have the best product. The best product doesn't have 100% market share, right? So the reality is the best product doesn't always win if you're in agreement with that. And that means what it comes down to is you as an individual seller, the tools that you are using, are you maximizing your use and efficiency with them? And your sales skills. And what I attribute that to is ultimately fundamentals. Those are the things you can control. So I can't control my competition and what price they go out at. I can't control, macroeconomic environment. But what I can control is how much pipeline generation do I do? What I can control is, am I doing MedPick on every key deal so that I can see around corners, so that I can anticipate when those punches are going to get thrown and I know how to dodge or parry. I can do those things and I can control those things. And so for me, it's about getting whether it's me or my team to be prepared to outwork, to out hustle anyone that's out there, because there are other solutions.
That's interesting. And how, when you think about motivating the team in that way and encouraging them to have that kind of mindset, what are more of the tangible considerations that you ensure they're aware of when engaging with enterprise? Because there's everything from SOC 2 and compliance, and there's bespoke reporting and localization. Does your product have X, Y, Z languages? And there's, I think, for any early stage companies, founders, teams listening, they're not always fully aware of what actually is involved in working with and selling to enterprise. Are there any key areas that you think everyone should be aware of from the offset that often get missed?
Yeah. Depending on what you're selling, the TAM is significantly larger, probably multiple orders of magnitude larger than what your market share is, right? And so if you start from the standpoint of this tiny little dot within this pie is your market share. You don't need to sell to the entire TAM in order to, hit your numbers for the next year. You need to grow from that tiny little dot to one that's, significantly larger, but still in the scheme of things, relatively small. When you are starting out selling enterprise, you do not check every box. You are basically selling with your arms tied behind your back and maybe blindfolded. And that's okay, because you don't need to sell to the laggards that are out there. You need to find the early adopters and ultimately the early majority that are willing to forgive you not having every box checked, because what you do better than anyone else is something that only you do. And so you need to align when you're doing your pipeline generation, when you're doing your discovery, you need to align what are the core capabilities that you have and align those to what the required capabilities are for a solution for that prospect. And if you can do that thing, you have a winning proposition. If you are trying to sell a very early product to a very well-established company that has all sorts of requirements that you're not going to meet for the next couple of years, you're literally just wasting sales cycles. And the only asset that we can't get more of, I know it's hard to fundraise in this environment, but truly the only asset we can't get more of is time. And so we want to make sure that we're using our time as best as possible, because that resource is one we can't get back.
And taking that motion, so your first sales hire at a company, you're selling into enterprise, and there's a lot of greenfield. There's the FTSE 100, the 500, the 1,000 companies, and you think, I can go after all these guys. We can replace those legacy systems. But it's not so straightforward. And in the early days, cash is king. Getting that revenue in, and sometimes it can be a 12, 18-month cycle. A term that gets thrown around a lot is land, expand, enterprise-wide. So you kind of get in small, you slowly over time, you roll out to other departments or regions, and then you go enterprise-wide. Versus maybe 3, 4, 5, 10 years ago, you could speak to someone like yourself, let's roll out across the whole company. Do you think that's just becoming the norm, or it depends?
I think it depends. At Ramp, as an example, most companies, when they choose a card and expense product, that's for the whole company, or certainly for given countries and regions, as opposed to, hey, we can have a different expense system in our department because we don't want to use, terrible clunky old tools. Usually that's not allowed. And so in my environment, typically we are selling wall to wall. I think there are other products out there. There are other types of companies where they can either leverage PLG or early sellers to find a way into a company and with that land motion. And because you have this viral growth of having a really great tool, I think Trumpet's actually a great example of it. It's able to spread throughout the organization because it delivers or over delivers so much value. It really is product dependent, though.
Yeah, I think that's a fair observation. And then taking that same scenario, so let's say you're the founding enterprise sales person or team, and you're going after these companies. What else do you think they need to be aware of outside of they've got Medic, they've done it before at their last company. They're doing a bit of land and expand, but they're also actively speaking about company-wide rollouts. Are there any other tools, processes, things that you're seeing your reps do like day in, day out that maybe most salespeople don't do?
I hate to be so old fashioned, but I think it really comes down to sales fundamentals. And that means when you're doing discovery, really finding pain. Don't solve that pain immediately. Like, oh, you have this little scratch. Like, let me immediately show you all the amazing bells and whistles and cool tools that I've got that can solve for that tiny little pain. Let them live with that pain. Let them stew in that pain. Let's talk about the ramifications, the implications of having that pain before we ever talk about our solution or solutions in general. And when you understand deeply that current state and the negative consequences from it, along with what their desired future state is and those positive business outcomes, well, now you can align your solution to that. But if you align too quickly, like, let me just show you this cool new tool that we've got, you're not really aligning to pain. You're not really aligning to business need. And ultimately it's kind of a shortcut. It feels good at the time, but it comes back to bite you in the end. And so I think if you really adhere, like almost religiously, to understanding their pain, to getting wider in an organization, like pipeline generation doesn't stop because you booked a meeting with a company, especially in enterprise, right? There might be 20 or 30 relevant stakeholders. You should be trying to get meetings with all of them. Just establishing one person who might have a little bit of pain is likely not going to get you a deal. And so the more pain that you've established, the more discovery you've done, the more you've mapped that organization and you understand who's who. That's going to serve you really well in speeding up the sales cycle, number one, understanding any kind of red flags up front, as opposed to 6 or 9 or 12 months down the road when you can't get that time back. Like that to me is what's so critical, especially in those early days, because you can do everything for everyone, but you are limited by time. So you want to have that ICP established, right? That ideal customer profile, and you want to qualify really deeply, because you want to make sure that you're spending 80% of your time on the 20% of the deals that are going to drive 80% of your revenue.
Pareto principle strikes again. It's a good one. It's so true. And you talk about fundamentals a lot, and it's interesting. Like 3 things I'm picking up on are building a business case, like a tangible business case with good value prop and ROI, multi-threading, and kind of creating like an org chart. Who's involved in this decision-making process? And it sounds like they're almost second nature to you and your team. But I think a lot of businesses maybe aren't fully aware of the value of those. And correct me if I'm wrong if I've missed anything. But yeah, keen to hear, is that like just standard practice of enterprise selling?
It should be. I've seen sloppy enterprise selling in my day as well, and I think, if you have the best tool out there, the best platform out there, you end up typically with sellers who are kind of lazy because they don't have to adhere so religiously to those fundamentals. They can get away with it. If you don't have the best tool out there, or you're in a macroeconomic environment where the bar is set so high for you to cross that threshold in order to win or to sell or close that deal, then at a minimum you need to be working harder and making sure that that you're adhering to those fundamentals, because I promise you, the people who are in the seller seat at the competitor organizations, they're going to do that. And so if you want to win, it's on you, whether you're dotting those I's and crossing those T's. I do think those fundamentals are really critically important. Once you have that base established, though, having a better buyer journey, having more assets, checking more boxes, like all of those kind of nice to haves or interesting things will help cut through that noise as well. But at a minimum, the table stakes is those fundamentals.
Interesting. And let's say you've got the fundamentals and business is doing well, and then you decide to expand the team. What do you look for in an enterprise sales hire? Like, what is the mindset? What are those key attributes that you would, for anyone listening, you'd say keep an eye out for that, because that's someone who really just gets enterprise?
Yeah, I preach this a lot. My own personal view is something I call the 4 H's, which is hunger, hustle, humility, and heart. It really, the corollary for that is essentially intangibles, right? Is this person going to outwork everyone out there? Are they really hungry to succeed? Do they have a chip on their shoulder? Like, truly having a chip on your shoulder, someone with that kind of attitude, they will run through walls if they can't find doors. And that's what you kind of need, especially in this environment. But you want someone who does it the right way, someone who's got that heart, who's going to do what's right for the business, and not just take shortcuts and do the things that are expedient for themselves. And someone who has a growth mindset. Truly, as good as you might be, there are always people out there who are as good or better. And so you should be trying to improve every single day. If you have that grit, you have that hustle, you have that growth mindset, you're coachable, you really want to succeed. With those intangibles, you could have the fourth best product out there and still win. I know because a long time ago, when I first came out to Silicon Valley, I couldn't get hired for a job. I couldn't even get an interview coming from a different industry. And I ended up getting a job with a video conferencing company. And I was competing against Zoom back in 2016, 2017. They were pretty well established. We were not. I was still hitting and exceeding my quota because I wanted it more, and I stuck to those fundamentals. And so that's why I say, it's easier if you have the best product out there, but even if you don't, you can still win if you go through that sales process the right way.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. And if you were a rep right now, boots on the ground, IC, and you're looking into 2024, what would be top of mind for you? Whether that's something to be worried about, whether that's something to be like taking advantage of, how would you be approaching that new year, which is literally around the corner, which is crazy?
Yeah. I mean, this is something I think about all the time. I think it's how can we get more with less, right? Everyone is trying to do that. The tools that you're selling, hopefully, are helping businesses to save money or to drive revenue or to become more efficient, right? Like those are or de-risk. Like those are the things that companies care about. So you want to make sure you're aligning to those company objectives. I think truly it does come down to outworking competition. I do think that there's a little bit of kind of fat and lazy mentality that established in 2021 that we're still trying to shake off. And that means that if you're willing to, cold call, if you're willing to go that extra mile when it comes to pipeline generation, when it comes to trying to see around corners, when it comes to close plans, mutual action plans, not just saying, hey, I can't get to the CFO, so I'm going to let my champion who I never tested do it for me, and things should work out okay. Don't accept that, right? If you have a champion, test your champion and get that meeting with the economic buyer. Earn that right to be in that room and make sure that you're closing that deal, not really offloading or outsourcing that role to someone that doesn't even work for your company, right? If you're willing to go that extra step, you will be much more successful. And so I think it really comes down to to having that juice, to having that drive, and not willing to to offload or outsource critical elements.
Yeah, for sure. And you just want to pick up on something there, which I think is a really interesting way to phrase it, like earning that right with your champion. Is your champion really a champion? How do you get your team to test that?
It's hard because I will say someone wants to take meetings with you. Oh, this meeting was great. I love this product, etc. Let's set up another hour next week. Like you feel good about that, right? You're like, oh, wow, they like my product. I'm feeling good. I did a good job. Everything's great. Sun is out, even though it's London, right? Like things are amazing. And the reality is, unless you test that person to understand, do they have power and influence in that organization? And can they get you to who you believe is the economic buyer? Unless you do that, you don't actually know if you have a champion. You have someone who is willing to take meetings with you. Okay, maybe they pass you a little bit of information about their organization, but you might have a coach. And a coach is not a bad thing, but it's certainly not a champion. It's certainly not someone who has the juice to be able to sell internally on your behalf, to be able to get you that meeting with that economic buyer. That's what matters. And if you can't get to that economic buyer, especially in this economic environment, chances are the company that you're competing with that is getting in that room with that CFO, they're going to win the deal and you're not. And so do you want to be talking about this 6 months from now when you've wasted countless hours? Or do you want to do the hard thing up front and test that champion? And the worst that happens is they don't succeed for you. They don't get you that in that room with that CFO. And that could be for two reasons. Either you didn't earn the right, and they still actually could be a champion. They've got the influence and the power, but you haven't earned the right yet. Or they don't have the power and influence, in which case, you really need to find a new champion. Either of those things are better to know 6 months earlier than 6 months too late. And so doing the hard thing up front really, really matters. There's an expression: if you have to eat the frog, eat it first thing in the morning. And if you have to eat two frogs, eat the biggest one first. Right? These are the things that scare us, but at the same time, they're really good for us. And doing it up front is going to establish, one, your fearlessness, and two, it's going to save you an awful lot of time.
Definitely. I think because top of funnel is so difficult, reps feel that like any opportunity is so precious, but it's not always an opportunity. And it sounds like it comes back to the fundamentals, the basics, like properly qualifying, understanding, is this a conversation or is it an actual project? But one of the luxuries that I don't think a lot of reps realize that they've got with enterprises, whilst you've booked a meeting with one person, there's 1,000, 2,000, 3, like however many other people at that organization. It's not going to be a single route in and kind of beyond. We're working in Enterprise at the moment. I think there's now 35 different stakeholders involved. When I entered that conversation, I thought, yeah, it'll probably be 10 to 15. Never did I think it'd be 30, 35. It's crazy. But that is the nature of enterprise. There's so many people involved, especially when you talk about, company rollout and things like that. It's you're transforming, you're impacting how that business operates. And I think that's the mindset you've got to have, is you're helping someone go through a change management, which is high risk. And it means, high stakes, lots of people involved, and a lot of money being spent. And so you can't underestimate that challenge ahead.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And if you have a PLG motion, if you have a land and expand motion, it might be even more than 35 stakeholders, because there might be 100 different teams in that company for you to potentially sell into. So again, the reality is, like, pipeline generation never stops, qualification never stops, pain is paramount. And if you think you have a champion, test them. Right? Make sure that you actually have a champion.
Definitely. Mark, it's been a pleasure. I feel like enterprise sales is such a beast. We could probably just talk about it all day long. It's a never-ending topic. How to perfect enterprise sales. Maybe you'll write a book on it one day. I feel like that's on the cards. Awesome. Well, we like to wrap up the sound check with a couple of quick fire questions.
Sure.
The first is, who else would you like to see on the show? The second is, any other podcasts that you would recommend people to check out? And the third and final one is a product or tool that you think people should check out in the space that isn't Trumpet.
Well, I do love Trumpet. All right, I'm going to go in reverse order here. Product someone should check out. I like Orem quite a bit. It's helped us to increase our productivity from a pipeline generation standpoint. When you can dial multiple calls at once, it allows us to really increase our output. As far as other podcasts go, I'm going to shamelessly plug ones that I've been on, like 20 VC and 20 Sales with Harry Stebbings, as well as the We Are Sales podcast out in Europe. I like what those guys are doing. And who else should you have on? There are so many great sales leaders out there. I think by choosing a few people or one person, it's going to be, I'm going to probably piss off a bunch of others. So I want to be diplomatic about it. I think that anyone who is being really successful in this market without having the best tool out there or the best product out there is doing something really great. And I think anyone who's leading an org like that is worth your time and worth everyone to listen, because it is hard out there. It's hard. And so that means we have to work harder, smarter, better, faster. And if you do those things, man, does it pay dividends, because this macro environment is not going to last forever. There will be, the sun will come out tomorrow. And that means that everything you're doing today to strengthen is going to serve you so well down the road.
Definitely. They say the best companies are built on a downturn. So keeping an eye out for them is a good call. Mark, pleasure. Thank you for your time. Really good to catch up, and looking forward to having you on the show in the future.
Rory, thanks so much. Great to see you.